Hello, Pastor Day. So glad for the time that you've given us. We're grateful and we're excited to have you as one of the main speakers in our conference this year. And I do understand that you have been in the ministry for many years now and that you are currently pastoring in the USA and that you also served as a missionary in Africa. Please tell us briefly about how you felt the call to be a pastor and how you later got steered to be a missionary.
Call to be a pastor. I would say it was a progressive call. I was in the Prescott congregation and there was a culture of discipleship and vision, and I wasn't immediately drawn to that, but in the process of time I began to feel God seed my heart to call me to be a pastor. Many people talk about call to preach. I felt the call to pastor. And I shared that with my pastor one day, and very shortly after that he put me on his staff, and then I ventured out to my first assignment after that. After being in the ministry for a number of years, our vision is always a world vision, and so my heart was always to the possibility of other nations. But I'm not real emotional, and I would avail myself at times to God at an altar, but my concern was direction. I didn't want to make a jump overseas and feel like when I have a hardship or a difficulty, wondering if I was in the will of God. And so I ran that by my pastor, and we had a conversation, and one of the things in that conversation he said was, you know, Jeff, Jesus gave us a commission, a mandate, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel. And he never rescinded it. If Jesus says not another word, we are still called to go. And so that put a little bit on me, and that's one of the things, along with some other factors in life, that stirred my heart to go into the other nations. And so I would encourage you, open your heart for that.
Would you highlight some fears and possible hindrances that you encountered in responding to the call to preach and how you overcame those fears?
Yeah, I think there's always an excitement about the call of preaching, especially as a young disciple, but then very quickly you are confronted with the fear of your inadequacies, your lack, and your dependence upon God is really what's needed. And you become painfully aware that, you know what, you see people's needs and you see congregations' needs and how inadequate you are. And so you got to realize that it's God who's called you, and it's God who will minister through you, and have your heart to want to serve people and give yourself to the ministry. God will help you.
As we start our conference this year, the 2024 Central Africa Bible Conference, many people are going to be challenged to rise up and respond to God's will for their lives. What are your words to those who may have some fears that might hinder them from responding to the call to be a pastor or a missionary?
Well, faith almost always involves risk. And I would say if God's calling you and you're sensing that, there's no better place to be than right in the middle of God's will. One man said, a friend of mine, Kevin Foley, said, the will of God has its own reward. And there's something about being in God's will. And as you obey God, He will be with you. He will enable you. And you're given the promise. David Livingstone's famous, most loved scripture in the Bible was, for lo, I'm with you always, even unto the end of the earth. And he said, those are the words of a gentleman, and he cannot go back. Our confidence is that God will be with us.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Pastor Day. We really appreciate your insight and experience.